Welcome to the Cheerful Soundman podcast, where we talk about living and working in the production industry. Today, we're going to give a couple different things. We're going to give some tips and tricks, or kind of my top 3 suggestions of things I would do as a new production tech or as someone coming up in the industry. Little before we do that, quick background. I'm the Cheerful Soundman, Eric Linesbunt. I'm one of the owners of Vivid Sky Productions in Florida. We have 2 operations, one in Gainesville, one in Tallahassee, Florida. And we've grown our business from my garage years ago to this multiple 10,000 square foot plus warehouses and festivals, concerts, small to large, to touring. So kind of a vast, that's who I am, my background a little bit. Today, we're talking about my advice to new technicians or technicians that are trying to improve or increase in their journey, maybe go from a beginning tech or an A2, L2, V2, or a stagehand into a more high-paying, better technical position. So I've got 3 main pieces of advice today. One is, the very most important, is be available. So oftentimes people ask me, how can I get into this? How can I do this? I want to do what you do, those type of things. And the number one thing is to be available. And what I mean by that is literally just that, be available. Answer your phone, answer your texts, take the opportunities, whether they're simple, seemingly insignificant opportunities like, running a delivery for someone, driving a truck for a production company, or jumping on as a stagehand at either a venue or with a production company. So just being available to and open to various opportunities. Now, as you grow in your opportunities, like I'm not going to go take a stagehand gig at this point, but I do still keep myself open to taking audio positions for different shows or tours or friends of mine that have bands, things like that. I may still jump in and mix audio, but depending on where you are in your journey, that may be a little different. But a big part of that availability, so maybe you have a little bit of experience and maybe you've got a little bit of lighting experience and maybe you're even running shows at clubs or smaller things like that. An example there is make yourself available on bigger shows and show up at different venues, different places, and just give your name, give your number, make sure you get production companies, local theaters, get their numbers and just say, hey, if you ever need any help, give me a buzz. You'd be surprised. I have probably 2,000 phone numbers in my phone, and you'd be surprised. I search by, Gainesville LD in my contacts, because when I save someone's number, like Kanara, who's filming for me, is in as Kanara Vivid Photographer. So I know she's a photographer, right? So obviously I know her well enough now, but if I'm trying to remember after the first time I met her, how did I meet her, blah, 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 I could search there. Also, big tip is if they'll give it to you without you being weird or aggressive about it, folks like me, get our number. So if you meet me out in the field, get my number, shoot me a quick text. And then now we've made contact, say, hey, this is Jim. I met you the other night at Vivid. I'm trying to get into the field. I know a little bit about audio. I'd love to help on a gig. And then, I probably will forget that or not do it, but then, periodically, every once in a while, shoot me a text and say, hey, you got anything coming up I could be helpful on? Taking some of that initiative. A lot of times I hear folks frustrated that they're not getting opportunities, but the guaranteed way to not get opportunities is to not put yourself out there and to not make yourself available. So again, being available. Once you're in a company like ours, I've got, I think we have 40-ish employees, something like that, between our 2 branches. The newer folks, it is, unless you come in with a lot of skills. We have a few college kids that, are interested in this, like doing this. But there's not necessarily a ton of hours and shifts available because their skill set's limited. But the folks who have excelled quickly are the ones that continue to pop in and say, hey, can I get on that call? Oh, I'm into audio, but I see you need more lighting folks. Can I jump in and help with that? Let me learn that. And then the ones that really excel are the ones that then are taking that to the next level of trying to figure out what is needed, how they can be helpful, how they can be of service, and then trying to gain some of those skills on their own. So while myself, other production company owners, theaters, different places are willing to train people who are willing to show up, there is a certain amount you really, in today's world, with how much you can learn on YouTube, on the internet, how much you can learn for free, basically, there's really, the ball is in your court to gain as much of that information and make yourself as valuable as possible. Even if you think, hey, I don't have any experience, I can't bring that much value, but just even having an understanding, watching, listening to podcasts, things like this, of people who are doing it, listening to the suggestions, and then taking those to heart. And then jumping in there and saying yes to the opportunities. There's nothing that gets my goat more than somebody who's begging me for opportunities, and then I'll put out to our company Slack, hey, need somebody to drive this last minute emergency run, something got forgotten, whatever, and then just crickets on Slack, nobody answers. And so, well, the same people who are begging for hours or begging for opportunities don't seem to recognize that those are the opportunities. They're not always, the opportunity isn't going to be straight go to the big tour or the big show or the big festival. The opportunities oftentimes look like, hey, you helped me out, you're now top of mind. And that's not a biased thing. That's not to say everybody has to shape their whole life around, our emergencies and our plans and things like that. But it is a way to cut to the front of the line, because then I'm going, oh man, Kanara, she helped me out in a pinch last time. If I've got 4 people to schedule, who do you think I'm going to just naturally, even if I'm not consciously doing it, who am I going to schedule first? The person who helped me, who was available, and who had a great attitude about it. So that would be the big number. That's really the number one thing. I know people usually go backwards, but that's the number one thing, is be available. Number 2 kind of ties into some of what I was saying with be available, is always be learning, always be seeking out opportunities to learn more. And sometimes that's cross-training. So sometimes you start as an audio, like I started as an audio person, so most of my knowledge, most of my context is going to be from the audio world. But when I started learning, that's all I wanted to do was audio or backline, which is really just, more fun audio. So that's all I wanted to do. However, when I worked at the Phillips Center here in Gainesville, I realized quickly that there were also 5 other people who also were into audio, and that's all they wanted to do. And so I learned pretty quickly, like, I can still want to specialize in that. I can still focus my independent learning, my own time on furthering that craft. But really, when it comes down to it, what I really need to do is make myself available to learn these other aspects of the craft. What I did not know at the time as a young person was that actually led into my skill set now that has allowed me to grow this company and work now almost 20 years professionally in production. And a lot of that was being available and wanting to learn. Hey, I've never done a lighting hang in a theater where you go in and we're hanging 8 electrics of traditional Lico fixtures with dimmers and all that. And a lot of the folks we get now have never even worked on those type of fixtures, but it is very much still relevant in theatrical, in dance, musicals, those type of things. So there's a whole realm there that I was able to learn just by being available and asking repeatedly, hey, can I get on the next lighting hang call? Because I knew they always had they would have 6 or 8 people on a lighting hang, and the top 4 were always the same people, the lighting, kind of the main lighting people. But the bottom 4 was always a cycle of who's available, who's ready, who's not annoying, who will show up and actually work hard. We would have kids show up with headphones in their ears, and it's working with headphones, but then you have to tell them the directions 4 times and things like that. And it's those people don't get those calls again. So learning, asking questions, there's definitely a fine art to asking questions without being annoying. But where you ask the questions, you kind of bank your questions, not asking questions every 30 seconds, but build up your 2 or 3 questions, ask them all at once in a good moment, and then take them to heart, take notes. Little notepad or notes in your phone are amazing things too. Pictures now, if you want to remember how, you're learning how to wrap a span set around a truss. It's not particularly hard. In most stagehands or anyone in production really should know how to safely do that, in my opinion. That doesn't mean you're going to be a rigger. Doesn't mean you should be or are going to be responsible for things floating above, overhead. But it makes you much more knowledgeable and much more useful on a crew, because also if somebody else is doing it wrong, you now have context and opportunity to go, whoa, that's a safety issue. I can't say I'm 100% sure why or how to do it correctly, but that doesn't look right to me. Can I bring that to someone's attention? So just having taking those opportunities to learn the different skills and the different crafts. And then within that, within your own craft, if you're very into, let's say you're an up-and-coming lighting person, taking the time, learning at every chance you get, asking those questions. When you are an L2 or an L3 on a gig, and really just paying attention, being on your feet, and then take the time to ask your LD at the end, like, why did we run the socket PEX cable that way? Like, why did we come from stage right instead of stage left? Well, because stage left is usually audio, stage right is typically, not always, but typically the standard is lighting and video. Oh, so they kind of stay separate. I get it. Power runs this way, power runs that way. And this is all stuff, as you can see by me even just talking to Kanara and the camera here, we love talking about this stuff and we love sharing it, but we don't love to share it if we feel like it's a waste of time. So sometimes you'll get that vibe that somebody doesn't want to talk to you or something like that. A lot of times they just don't necessarily know that you're bought in like that at that point. Some people are just jerks, and that's fine. But most people in this industry, from what I have found, are very, not just willing, but almost excited to talk to you about why things are done a certain way. And then if you work in the same company or the same crew or the same, use the stage, you're on a stagehand crew that gets used by this company all the time, the more that you understand how they want it, why they want it, the more valuable you are to that show, and the more guaranteed you're always going to get that call. So when Vivid Sky Productions comes to this venue, we request Trey at G2 every time, because he's sharp, he knows his stuff. As an example, he knows his stuff as an L2. I don't have to tell him 6 times how to run cable, all that. And he's a stagehand. He's not, on this side of things as far as the L2 or L3, he can do all those things. But just as an example of someone we work with regularly. So it just makes you increasingly valuable, and it makes you increasingly employable. And as you do that, as we know, you stack skills. So once you get those skills, once you get the baseline skills and you're starting to really seek the knowledge and find ways to add to those skills, you're exponentially getting better. It's not a linear process at all when you learn and you get more skilled. As an audio person, just really paying attention to what are the audio guys doing? Why did they do that? Whoa, it sounded really bad tonight. Can I even just observe and see without telling the guys it sounded bad? That's not helpful. But can I observe and see what did they do different than last week when I worked with the same company? Somebody else was the A1. Did they deploy it differently? Is it just choices at the console? Is it a different setup? Is the band just kind of shitty tonight? Like, what are the differences? And trying to kind of learn from those opportunities. And then the biggest one is learn from your mistakes with that. So if you do mess up, if you do make a mistake, learn from it. Say that you've learned from it. Ooh, I understand where I went wrong or what I did wrong. This is what I'll do next time to not repeat that. And make sure your lead, if it was a big blunder, make sure they know, I understand it will never happen again. I see why it was a problem, etc. So showing us too, so being available, it also kind of goes with showing us you're available and showing us that you are a sponge, you're willing to learn. All right, and number 3 is be humble. So no matter where you are at in your journey, whether you're just starting as a stagehand or a warehouse employee, warehouse grunt in here, be humble, recognize that you have a lot to learn. The best touring guys I know, the top engineers in the world are some of the most humble guys as well. There's a certain, especially with audio, but with all positions, there's a certain amount of confidence and almost arrogance that you have to be able to stand up in an arena, in a stadium, and say, I know what it should sound like, I got this, for thousands and thousands of people. So you do have to have that confidence, but also having the humility to get feedback from the promoter, from the band, from management, from patrons. A lot of times people get very kind of in their feelings about getting the comments on Google reviews and things like that from a show, from a venue of, oh, sound was terrible. Well, some folks, which are usually not the better engineers, some folks will respond to that with, oh, well, they were just in a bad seating area, or they don't know what they're talking about, or all these ways of dismissing that and pushing that away, versus really getting curious and saying, whoa, what section were they in? Okay, oh, wow, they were kind of between the main hangs and the outfills. Maybe we had a gap in coverage there, and we need to pay more attention to that at the next stop or the next show or the next arena, And let's pay attention to that in our deployment and make sure we spend some extra time measuring those sections to make sure, because the bottom line is those people, and sometimes they're just wrong. So I'll just also say that. Sometimes people are just like, this sounds terrible. And you're like, they're standing next to me and this sounds amazing. And 99% of the people in here think it sounds amazing. There's always going to be those. It's not, you don't have to pay attention to every negative comment. But when you start to see a trend, or you start to see seating sections, or every time we play an arena, the right side is having problems, like that could be something that you need to adjust in your deployment in how you do things. Or it could be that your mix is too bottom heavy and now, you know, it's too boomy and bassy. So basically we take that feedback from everybody, from patrons, from the client, from the band. Now the band can't necessarily hear what everybody else is hearing, but they do know what they want to and should sound like. And so taking all those things into consideration and then mixing and matching those choices and mixing them with what you know is right. Again, it's a very hard task, but that's also why it takes humility and it takes being humble to be able to do that, to be able to not get in your feelings if you have a bad night too. Like, my mix wasn't great tonight. I struggled all night. The room was really reverberant. The band was a little loud. Like there was just a lot of things going on and it was not my best mix tonight. And having the humility to do that and then backtrack and really take a look at how you can get better as well. So again, I follow some of the bigger engineers on the planet, the Robert Scovilles of the world. Been with Tom Petty, and now he's with Kenny Chesney, and just a great voice in our industry. Also, from what I can tell, I haven't met him, but from what I can tell, he's a very humble guy and always also trying to teach others within the industry. He shares a lot about his mixes, his choices, his life, life doing audio. And, I, for one, am very grateful for folks like that, because it reminds you that the people at the top are just like us. They've just done it more and are better at it. And so kind of same with, I was talking about before, that's all I am, is someone who's done it a little more and gotten better at it than someone who's just started. So we all have that opportunity and ability to climb like that if we're doing these things. And, there's lots of excuses and reasons why people can come up with why they haven't had those opportunities and things like that. But truly, I believe that the world is not lacking for opportunities at all. It's lacking for us seizing those opportunities, I oftentimes say, well, a guaranteed way for us not to get the gig is to not ask. If we don't ask and they didn't notice to ask us, then we're definitely not getting the gig, versus if we go out and we ask, like, hey, can I put in a bid for this for you? We'd love to work with you. Now still 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, we got it. We already got bids. We're good. But that 1 time out of 10 that's one more opportunity than I had I not asked. And that applies all the way downstream to, like I started with, being available. If you just put yourself out there and put the opportunities, you'll strike out the first 8 times. And then time number 9, you'll walk up. The amount of people that I've hired because they've walked up at the exact right time, it has nothing to do with anything else. There were probably other people who had already asked me. It's just I had an immediate, I had a need. I need a driver tomorrow. And so came up and talked to me, and I've already met you 3 or 4 times. Yeah, okay, you have a clean driver's license. Do you want to hop in a truck tomorrow and run this gear down to Tampa? Okay, great, cool. And then if that person does a good job, responds well, all that, then maybe there's more opportunities for them. Then I've had that same situation, and then the person was kind of a butthead about stuff, and then it was like, okay, cool, we iron that out. That person does not get another opportunity. So it's being humble in those opportunities, and then if you're an up-and-comer, don't turn your nose up at those opportunities. Again, that's kind of being available, but also being humble, where you say, hey, I would love the opportunity. I will be, box pusher number 4 on this, with this production company, because I believe I want to work with them, and I believe that's my way in. And a lot of times, again, that's a better way in, a better way to make yourself noticed than anything. Those are my main tips on how to grow and expand and get promoted at a production company.